Hey everybody, thanks for coming. On the handout, my name is Zachary. Other people call me Matt Westgate. There was a typo in there, but I decided to lean into it. Thanks for coming, and thanks to the organizers for putting this event together. It's no easy task to pull off a camp, so a lot of appreciation for them for volunteering their time to make this happen. I'm really interested in not necessarily all the tools that make DevOps happen, but all of the team dynamics that need to be in place in order to sustain those tools and foster a collaborative environment. Because technology isn't going to fix things if the people don't want it. And I've seen enough DevOps examples fail in organizations that I wanted to look a little bit about what needs to be there first before those tools can thrive. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. A little bit about me. During the day, I'm the CEO of Lullabot. We're a Drupal agency. We do strategy, design, and development for a lot of larger Drupal sites. Our clients include Martha Stewart, MSNBC, and a bunch of other ones. This Old House was a project that we did, and we've been around for about 12 years. And we're a distributed company. So talking about developer isolation and working from home and stuff, these topics are top of mind for our organization. We also have a company called Tugboat. That is a DevOps company that spins up ephemeral one-off environments in order to share your work with your team. So as you're building something, before you want to put it into production, you spin up a preview environment to share that version of the website with that pull request or that code to the rest of your team so they can see it. You don't have to wait for that 2-week end of sprint demo to show the work. You can actually have more real-time conversations with your stakeholders. And then we also have a sister company called Drupalize Me. How many people are familiar with Drupalize Me? Yeah, almost everybody in the room. And that's teaching people how to do all the stuff that we do, how to build Drupal sites. So that's the stuff that keeps me busy. So I won't go too much into the background, but I do think it's an interesting story of how sort of DevOps came into being. DevOps is what's it called? It's a clipped compound of development and operations. And basically, the storyline of it goes something like this, where development, our production was always asking development to build things faster, sooner, quicker. Development said to production, hey, if we're going to do this, we actually need to get a little closer together. So production said, okay, let's do that. So those two departments started working more closely together, business needs and actually building it. Meanwhile, operations, the people that are supporting the site, started getting all these requests a lot sooner, right? Like, hey, we need another instance. Hey, we need to deploy. Hey, we need to deploy. And operations was like, hold on for a second. What happened to, why are you needing to do this stuff so quickly? Our job is stability and reliability, and all these changes kind of freak us out. So the whole thing about DevOps is these groups all working more closely together. That's the storyline of development and operations. So what team dynamics are necessary? The whole thesis of my presentation is that this kind of collaboration only happens when people feel safe and included. And so we're going to talk about what safety means in order to have a thriving DevOps culture, and we're also going to talk about collaboration as well. And my whole argument is that without these things, that no amount of DevOps is going to improve your organization. So this is everything we're going to talk about today. I'm just going to throw it all up here. So you can see at the top I have safety, collaboration, and DevOps. On the collaboration side, we're going to talk about how to get these elements in place. And this all comes from different research around the web. For collaboration, we're going to look at information flow as a type marker for the level of collaboration that an organization can possibly have. There's some really good research from this back from 2004. Then we're going to jump over to safety and what it means to have teams that feel empowered, that feel confident, that can share their voice, because you need that if you're going to break down departmental silos. For that, we're going to look at some research that Google did back in 2016 about what does it look like to have a highly functional team. In particular, they said the most important component was psychological safety. And so we're going to dive, they said all the other ones, having dependability, structure and clarity, meaning and impact, all of those were less important than teams that actually know how to work together, how to hear each other, and how to collaborate together. So there's a lot of awesome research by a Harvard professor on what psychological safety means, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that too. And then, once we have these two in place, we're going to jump a little bit over to here and look at specific tooling that promotes safety and collaboration. My argument is that highly efficient teams make better software. So let's start with a highly efficient team and then bring the software in after that. So let's jump into collaboration first. So in this research, this professor Westrom, he broke down information flow into 3 general groups. Over here on the left, you have the pathological, more power-oriented. The idea is that information is used for power, for advancement. It's not about sharing. It's more about, like, the more information I have, the more secure my job is. So the least collaborative. Over here, in the middle, you have bureaucratic. That's the idea that information is there to serve the department. It's to promote the values of the department forward, and it's more seen in that individual silo. Over here, you have the generative or the transformative flow of information, where the idea is to get information to anybody that needs it as soon as possible in any way necessary. So bureaucratic is good. It's good to have rules and procedures, but what's more important is that the information gets to the people that it needs to in the least amount of time. There's also, like, this whole thing is more about, like, tribal leadership or, like, those kinds of things, like stage 4, stage 5, tribal leadership, all of that kind of stuff, transformational cultures. A generative culture requires that alignment, awareness, and empowerment replace suspicion, isolation, and passivity. Sort of the ideal to get to. What's interesting for me is how failure is treated in this group, or in these groups. You start with, wasn't me, I was dead at the time, to failure being a form of punishment, to generating inquiry and opportunity. A famous Etsy article had talked about blameless postmortems. It's not so much not always the flow of information, it's how you respond to crisis that kind of defines you. If nobody in your organization is saying that a mistake happened, it doesn't mean that your organization doesn't have mistakes, it just means you don't know about them. And so this whole idea of psychological safety and treating failure as an opportunity for how we can grow, how we can get better, is directly relational to, like, the level of DevOps that you have in your organization. I'll just read this thing here from the Etsy report. If we go with blame as the predominant response to failure, then we're implicitly accepting that deterrence is how organizations become safer. It's also founded in the belief that individuals and not situations cause errors. It's also aligned with the idea that there has to be some fear that not doing one's job could correctly lead to punishment, because fear of punishment will motivate people to act correctly in the future, right? If you have kids, you know that doesn't always work. we would only need to ground our children once. We'd only need to take their cell phone away from them once to kind of learn the lesson. There has to be sort of a larger reason for wanting to improve the situation that we're in, and sort of creating alignment in that process to make things better in the end. So I put that generative group as the gold standard for collaboration. So that's a little bit about that. Let's talk about safety and what psychological safety means. I talked about the details, but have you ever been in a meeting and you look around the room and you kind of want to call BS on something, or maybe it's not even that you want to call BS, it's that like this time, there's no way we're going to meet this timeline, and like you're waiting for somebody to say it, but nobody says it. So then you think to yourself like, oh, well, maybe they've already talked about this, or or maybe I missed a meeting, and so you don't say anything. That's an example of not feeling psychologically safe in a situation. The personal risk is too high. It outweighs any potential benefit in that situation. So that's the feeling that we're trying to get in front of here. Here's a couple other examples of self-preservation in action. So if you don't want to look ignorant, don't ask questions. If you don't want to be seen as incompetent, don't admit weakness or mistakes. If you don't want to appear intrusive, don't offer ideas. And if you don't want to seem negative, then don't critique the status quo. Obviously, anyone feeling this way is feeling shut down, right? Self-protection has taken fully over, and relationships like this, projects like this, are often self-managed into oblivion. The real kicker to the behavior is this. Every time we don't share something, every time we don't feel safe enough, we rob ourselves, we rob our team of small moments of learning and possibly innovation, right? Like, I don't know about you all, but through my mistakes, that's how I've gotten to where I am. It's all my series of, things that I tried that didn't work, that I was willing to look at and sort of improve the second time, third time around, fourth time around. That's sort of gotten me to where I am. Some of my best relationships have been with people that I failed on projects with together. I have this personal philosophy that you don't know the level of friendship that you have with someone until you fight with them, right? Because when you fight with them, that's when you start to see a real personality of an individual. And some of my best relationships, had a moment where, we were on a project and a server went down. And so I was talking to the hosting company and it's like, we're screaming at each other. And, we had a project that we did where the site needed to stay up and never go down at least one day a year, because there was one day a year where it was the most important event of the year for them. And the first time around, the site went down, and it went down for about 15 minutes. And I'm just screaming at this guy on the other end of the phone, this hosting company, and no matter what, he won't put his company under the bus. He is calm, confident, reassuring. I'm freaking out. And I hung up, and I was still really upset with him, but I had this feeling of I want to hire this guy one day. This is an incredible individual who taught me how to sort of manage my own feelings in a situation of crisis. And that company ended up getting sold, and he was looking for a job, and he's my president of Lullabot now. But that's exactly what I mean with being able to see people in their true nature and using that as an opportunity to really understand them. I got a little off topic there. So if there's one thing to take away from this presentation, it's this slide right here. What would it look like to go back to your organization and start from this place? To say you will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. Sure, you still have to follow HR policies. You can't start doing a bunch of illegal things. But it's okay to question the status quo. It's okay to say how you feel. It's okay to come to speak up with new ideas. It's okay to give everybody in the room a voice. It has a profound impact on your culture, on the possibilities for innovation, and the kind of collaboration that you can have as a group. Some people in this, I've given this presentation a couple of times, and they fear that this is being too soft. But I want to reassure you that safety and accountability and motivation can all coexist. You actually increase accountability with a principle like this. You allow your team to fully own their mistakes and provide their own remediation. If they messed up, they're probably the best candidates to also fix the issue as well. You make mistakes safe to talk about, and then rather what might be happening now is that nobody's just telling you about the mistakes. I'll give you an example relevant to the Drupal community. So back in 2007, Lullabot was 1 year old, and we had our first really big project. And Drupal had a hard time scaling on this project. We had Dries in on the project with us. He was helping us keep the site up. We got it launched. We got it stable, virtually high-fiving each other. And then we get this phone call. I get this phone call from the client. And we said, I said, everything's good. Like, the site's up. Like, what's going on? And he's like, we've got a big problem. I said, what's going on? And he said, well, our company's lawyer logged into the website. And when he logged in and looked at his user profile, it said that he was a 14-year-old girl. And I thought, oh dear Lord, this is the moment that Lullabot gets shut down. We had an off by one error in the user ID field for the database migration script. User number 1 was user number 2 on the site. User number 2 was user number 3 on the site. And we were leaking personal information. In that situation, the person who did the database migration actually said, you know what? That was me. I screwed up. Let me fix it. And so she did, and she did it very quickly. But everybody was freaking out. And afterwards, I called her after the whole thing, and after she was calm, she's like, oh great, the boss is calling me. I'm going to get fired now for doing this. And I said, guess what? She said, what? And I said, you are our database migration expert from now on. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, the chances of this ever happening again are very few. And if there's anybody that's an expert now, it's you. That person was Angie Byron from back from her days at Lullabot. And she can tell you her own version of that story as well. But it was a good experience that really taught me a principle like this. That was a defining moment for me and her too. So how to do it is a lifelong process, but you can get started pretty easily. There's 3 steps to it. The first step to psychological safety is that when you're looking at a situation, view it as a learning problem, not an execution problem. You lead by example. You say, hey, listen, and this is most client projects, right? We've got this big, hairy project. Yeah, we've done things similar before, but every project's always different. I'm not going to know everything that we're going to run into. I'm going to need everybody's voices, everybody's ears, everybody's brains fully engaged on this project. We need an open line of communication here. There's a whole bunch of stuff we have to figure out. You bring everybody together. That creates the rationale for speaking up. On the second one, acknowledge your own fallibility. And you say, hey, I'm not going to catch everything that's happening. Stuff's going to be flying by. There's things that I'm going to miss. I really need to hear from each of you as we go along in this project. That creates the additional safety for speaking up. And then the last one is model curiosity. Be the behavior that you want your team to be. Ask lots of questions. Show being curious, right? If you're asking a lot of questions about the project, other people will start to model that behavior. That creates the necessity for voice. So final thoughts about collaboration and safety. For better or for worse, this kind of change usually comes from leadership, and sometimes leadership has to go in order to get a psychologically safe workplace. Leadership drives culture, right? And culture is what the leaders think about and what the leaders want to do. And so if this behavior isn't coming from the top, sometimes the top needs to be replaced. Every now and then, you can have someone within your group or team sort of start to instantiate that change. But it's a lot harder to do that way, and that's the unfortunate news. I don't want anybody to fire me at Lullaby, so I'm trying to learn how to do this and be a better leader in this regard. Leadership aside, there's a bunch of research that says it's not about who's on the team, it's about how well they work together that counts. And there's a lot of research on this. You don't need a team of extroverts. You don't even need consensus-driven decision making. You need people that are willing to listen to each other, to work together, to feel safe enough to share ideas, to feel safe enough to fail, to have a highly functional, highly effective team. This came from the Google research. It's also not about individual performance of team members. It's not about what they bring to the table. It's, again, how well they work together that far outweighs anything else. So back to the isolation stuff. This is all to say that the more there is communication, the less isolation there is on a project. So you want to make it safe to communicate and make it safe for your slides to go down in the middle of a presentation and still be able to know what you're talking about. So collaboration happens when people feel safe and included. Without safety and collaboration, a DevOps culture and practice cannot thrive. So let's talk about some of the tooling that supports this from this perspective. Automation is hugely important. It's a key differentiator for organizations. Everybody's trying to put their build pipelines together. They're trying to automate those processes, testing, all of that. So the more that there's time for innovation, the faster the feedback cycle is. Anybody not doing version control in here?
I'm willing to admit it.
No one wants to admit it. No one feels safe enough. Long story short, it's a cornerstone before you begin anything else. You've got all best practices sort of rest on having version control in place. I won't go into the why. I won't cover the details because we all know why this is important. You can only change the file extension of your text files so many times before you realize you probably need a different practice. How about code reviews? Are people doing code reviews? To show of hands. Half the room. A little more than half the room. Yeah, okay. All right. Most people are. Beneficial? Helpful? Does anybody want to speak to some of the why it's beneficial on the project? What?
Depends on the client.
Depends on the client. So you're doing code reviews with a client. The client's reviewing your code before it goes.
It's usually beneficial, but
I see.
sometimes not because they just rubber stamp it.
Yeah.
There are lots of reasons. One is it's a way of learning from each other, and both the reviewer and the reviewee can learn something from it. And often we catch things, subtle errors that otherwise would have gone into testing and QA, and someone would have found a bug and sent it back, blah, 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 and it's a lot quicker if you catch it early.
Yep. So you have other developers do the code review.
Yes.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of that is having people look at parts of the project that they're maybe not touching to sort of understand a more holistic perspective of what's going on in that particular piece of software. It's also, code reviews can be an exercise in humiliation, and not a good way, if you don't have a collaborative, safe workplace to begin with, right? I've also seen code reviews be used to humiliate or punish people, and that's that's why, for instance, I say all these other things need to be in place. You got to have a team that has trust, that has empathy, in order to make code review actually functional and realize, like, I'm actually giving another human feedback on the quality of their work. Maybe I want to be sensitive and thoughtful and treat them how I would want to receive this kind of feedback. Yeah, any other thoughts on code reviews? Yeah, back here.
Yeah, I think it also helps to standardize the practices of the team, so they're all exposed to the styles that are in place and all the different things. And they're able to kind of replicate that same approach across the board.
Yeah, patterns, development patterns, things like that. Yeah, in the back.
At the minimum, too, it gives the developer who's submitting the PR, validation and assurance that they're doing it right.
Right. Yeah. Can I please get another set of eyes on this before this goes to production? Dear Lord. Yeah.
If you only have one set of eyes on a piece of code and then that person leaves the company, you're stuck. There's so many projects where people say, oh, so-and-so wrote this code, so he has to make the changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet the business team can be so resistant to implement something like this because it's they see it as another bottleneck in the process. So actually teaching them how to make, how this improves the overall quality of the code and the overall retention of the development team is a really important conversation to have.
Do you have any thoughts on people that aren't on a project performing a review of the work that another developer's done?
I do, yeah, and that's a good segue to the next part of where I'm going with that. I don't know if it's necessarily at the code review level that I would do it, but it's the next practice that I'll talk about. So the short answer is yes. Yes, I do. I think that's important. Cool. Anybody using preview environments? Good. Nice. I want to talk more about that. But yeah, once you have code reviews in place, you can go to the next level of collaboration and actually spin up temporary environments for people to look at, like on a pull request basis or a branch basis, whatever your workflow is. But then it gives you a way to share a fully working version of that site with a stakeholder. It makes code reviews faster too, right? Because now they can see the actual output of the change along with the code side by side. If you haven't really thought about this before, let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. So this is the typical process, right? You usually have one staging server that everybody's fighting for. The good news is that companies today like Pantheon and Platform and even Acquia, if you can afford it, offer preview environments that you can spin up, whether it's called multi-dev or what. They offer the environments that you can spin up. So rather than every developer fighting for access to the staging server, somebody having to maintain the staging server, stakeholders waiting for the staging server to be updated, it can start to look something like this. Or you take that whole staging environment, put it in the cloud, a developer has unlimited access into those environments. They can spin up whatever they need, whatever services they need, and then they can start to have those one-on-one conversations with the stakeholders. What it does is it takes that whole show and tell process that happens maybe once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks on your sprint cycle, and everybody comes to that meeting knowing what they're going to talk about, knowing the work that they're going to see, and it's just a quick review at the end before it goes out. Related to that is the concept of self-service infrastructure, right? I don't think that this is new to anybody in the room, but I just came from the Lando talk that Mike gave, and the whole idea is that you define your infrastructure in code. Again, in the interest of collaboration, you take all of the software development practices that we developers have learned and you start to apply it to operations. You start to apply it to the infrastructure level. Having consistent environments creates harmony. Having harmony makes your team work better together. The preview environments is the place where I would share the work and start to get the non-technical team in. And by spinning up those ephemeral environments, it's not just developers at that point, right? Like you can start to bring in the testing team, the QA team, the business stakeholders. They can start to provide feedback sooner, while it's still safe and cost effective to make change rather than getting to the end of the thing and then developers are anxious on the call because they've got all the code rework that they know they're going to get, so on and so forth. Does anybody want to say anything about preview environments? What are you using? How is it working? Are you doing it differently? Bad luck with it?
I have one
Nick?
client that actually has a setup on, they use Jenkins and Linode, so you can deploy any branch in a sense of a whole new environment, kind of like multi-dev, but they roll their own. And one of the really cool things that I think they did is they gave their stakeholders the ability to do that too. Because many times stakeholders want to also preview things like content or reworking the layout of the page and things like that. So it gives them ownership over that as well. And it works really well because they can, instead of them like adding stuff to one of your environments and then when you blow it away, blowing away their work, they have their own separate setup and they can figure that out.
Yeah, that's neat. And it's easy for the stakeholder. It's easier to accommodate the stakeholder's need of like, well, I want to see it green. I want to see it blue.
Yeah.
Now, you know what? That's not so hard to do. I can make a little change in the code. I can push up a site where they can see it. And those requests are a lot less annoying than they used to be.
Yeah, and it's integrated with Slack. So they just
Oh, cool.
write a Slack command and it sets up the whole environment in 5 minutes.
Nice. I saw some hands way in the back. No?
I was just gonna say, we're using Pro CI and doing code review and for one thing, it is worth mentioning that you also have to maintain those environment setups. Depending on how you have it set up, that's additional work.
Yep.
But one big advantage I found this past week, and we know about it, is just it lets us keep the main development Git branch much cleaner, just because we're not having to like deal with reversions on it. We're able to kind of make sure we get things right on the feature branches. Juggle, say, you know what, this feature, let's kind of put this one aside, try an alternative, and then merge it in when we're really signed off, instead of having to go back and revert and it lets you manage that code much better.
Nice. Yeah. Got it. So the preview environments actually started to change a little bit of your workflow that you were using in your organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Sorry. How are you testing the integration of all of these branches that are getting previewed? And does a client sign off on that somewhere as this package is ready to go to production?
Yeah. So your question is, I have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 preview environments in these examples. What happens if they're actually part of a working system together? I need to take 3 of those, put them together, roll them out.
Exactly.
If you're rolling your own preview environments, there's ways that you could do that. You could branch those 3 chunks of code. You could tag it. And so there's nothing. Different programs work differently. I don't know how multi-dev works, but what you could do is you could just package up those 3 preview environments, because it's just Git code at the end of the day. So you just bundle that up and then build out a preview from the other 3.
But what if there was another set of preview stuff going on, and these 2 haven't ever worked together?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's what it is. You merge them together and make a new preview and fix any issues that come up. And then once that's signed off, you would then put it in the QA release, and that's when final QA happens.
Yeah. At the end of the day, these environments can be, depending on your workflow, most often they're just branches. So you could just merge your branch into another branch. You could merge it up to master. You could take 3 branches and put them together, and then you could just say build this combination now. And once that combination looks good, then maybe it goes to, QA, and then finally it goes out to prod. But 2 of them stay back because it's a part of another feature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, feedback? Yeah, 2 more. One in back, and then Nick.
Scale branches lead to scale environments, lead to additional server costs and work to maintain. Like that 5th stakeholder, like totally disappeared.
Yeah, stakeholder Bob's on vacation. He's like in
Yeah,
Hawaii. He doesn't want to see any preview environments.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's something that you need to deal with.
I've been attending some of the DevOps Days conferences, which is a really good group of people. Reminds me a lot of the Drupal community, and the things that they're talking about within their group is feature flags and trunk-based development, and some of it is for the argument that you've got merge hell, you've got all of this stuff that happens here that you have to try and roll back into master. Why not be able to deploy code that isn't working yet into production? Like, isn't production the true test environment anyway? Why do you need preview environments? Your production environment should be robust enough to handle failure in your code. It's sort of like the Netflix principle where what's it called? The Chaos Monkey project that they have, where they like purposely manipulate their production environment to handle fault tolerance. So there's a whole other thing of like, just wrap your almost working code in features, and then when it's done and complete, then you can take the features off and have it work in production. It's also part of a movement of saying that the business stakeholders should be the ones that are turning on features, not developers. And so there's companies like LaunchDarkly that are doing feature flags as a service, where now you're tying the release of features to information and demographics about the customers. So A/B testing, but at the code level, that's turned on by the business stakeholders. So there's a bunch of thought about how to avoid some of that, and I don't know how I feel about all of it.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
How do you handle hot fixes and things? Because most of my clients handle them wildly differently, depending.
Hot fixes into production, like deploying things out.
Something that needs to get out right away, like the user, off by one error in the user database, like, so it doesn't go through necessary preview environment, all that stuff. It just needs to get out and then get reintegrated back in.
Yeah, well, first, in that situation, I say a prayer. And then I ask for forgiveness. I don't know if I have a specific best practice around that. A lot of that is whatever environment's using. If you have someone on Pantheon, maybe the push is different than if it is from another place. Does anybody want to give feedback for how they handle hot fixes?
I try to run it through the same flow because I know it affords me the safety nets that we have in place, but I recognize sometimes that might not be possible.
Yeah, it might be more in that generative collaboration too, of like, this is critical. We've got to bypass some of the bureaucratic process for the sake of getting this out the door.
I was just going to note that it also depends on the scale of it. Obviously it depends on the scale of the project and the phase of the work of the project. You want to have this preview environment set up where you're having parallel, you have 5 developers in this example. If there's one part-time developer maintaining a site, then they're having to maintain all this extra infrastructure as well. So you probably scale it down at that point, and maybe you're just using a single staging environment, right? So being able to switch out those workflows makes sense too.
Yep.
But it depends on the project.
Yep. Jeff in the back.
And another thing that we do sometimes, so there have been instances here and there where there's an unbelievably major problem, and sometimes it's like there was no way we could have found this in another environment because production traffic is always slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do one of those, though, my team always has a process. I think you mentioned it, blameless postmortem. Basically, some way afterwards to regroup as a team and say, what exactly happened? Because sometimes somebody doesn't really understand it. They might see the chat history and be like, I know there was a major problem, no idea what it was. So you have to know what happened. What exactly did we do to fix it? Did somebody log into the server and run a command, or did somebody commit code and push it up, or what? And then how are we going to prevent this from happening again? And that's the most important thing for us. We didn't used to do that part. We used to just say, like, here's what happened and here's what we did to fix it. But if you spend the time to also say, this was hard to test before production, then you can have the conversation, can we find a way to test
Yeah.
It might be hard, but it might be like when you're going to do anything that affects that feature, that's what you do.
I just tack onto that because we've run into situations where you think there are differences between the preview environment and the production environment. Turns out there wasn't. So you have broken images. In some cases, you actually have to trust in those environments and make sure that you're identifying because you can have a local development environment where parts of it are broken and
Yep.
disregard certain things. But if you have this working correctly, it's an immediate warning flag. that
Yeah.
something could be wrong. So sort of the opposite of what you're saying.
Yeah, maintaining parity in your infrastructure across environments is really critical. That's why I'm really interested in things like, the stuff that Lando's doing with trying to unify development environments, the stuff with the Probo and Tugboat and multi-dev about trying to unify preview environments, and all of the containerized things that make it easier to increase the level of parity that you have on your different deployment levels. And the blameless postmortems is a really important process of being able to say, okay, that didn't go well. What can we do to make it better? That phrase was coined many, many years ago, blameless postmortem. And there's a new phrase that's coming up that's perhaps more realistic. It's called blame-aware postmortems, sort of recognizing the human component of just because you say there isn't blame doesn't make it go away. That is a human, a natural human process. There is a process of unfortunately, blaming is a way to sort of get through hey, I'm angry that these things happen. I need to voice this concern. And once I voice it, then I'll be able to let it go. Just because you pretend like it doesn't happen doesn't mean that it's not actually happening. And so there's some refinement, some iterations to the blameless postmortem to be more blame aware, but also to have a process in place that allows that to happen, and then to move everybody on to actually work on the resolution. All right. So what we did here, the conversations we just had as a group, is a good example of the ways to collaborate together with your team, right? You can have your leadership say, okay, we've got safety and collaboration. Now here are the tools we're going to use. And everybody can probably guess what would happen. Absolutely not. Your people are on the front lines. They're doing the work day in and day out. The first thing you do is you sit down with them and say, what are the critical areas that we need to identify, that we need to automate, that we need to bring DevOps best practices into? They're the ones that are going to know what the bottlenecks are for them. So this is just a warning that don't go out and do all the top-down stuff just because you've got the other layers in place. With automation, there are insanely high payoffs in most organizations by investing time now for time later. Map out the payoff with the team and then circle back on it at the end. Did it save time and promote consistency? If so, oftentimes the people who used to have to do that task get a big boost in morale as a result. Some organizations would fire them, and that's the wrong thing to do. Just because you automate someone's job doesn't necessarily make them obsolete. The intent is that it frees up the person to do more knowledge worker-related tasks. That's the end goal. If just because you have someone on your organization whose job it is to resize the 36 images, the 36 image formats for each image that comes through, they probably have other tasks that they're more capable of. And can bring that expertise to another level. Although sometimes I recognize that if you're making a big shift as a business unit, that you do have to go through some churn and things like that. I don't want to paint an unrealistic picture. So I asked an engineer, one of my lullabots, to review this talk, and she summed it up this way. She said, when you're on a team that has empathy, trust, and openness, DevOps tends to follow. She also liked pizza. But these values flourish when people feel safe and included. And it's easy to forget oftentimes that a new software tool means understanding whether or not your team is ready to use it. If you're really trying to make your team work better together, start with changing the culture first. That's it. And just wanted to give a shout out to Tugboat. It's free to use, so you don't need a credit card. It's not free as in open source. We're thinking about that, but it is free preview environments for your project. So if you've done much Lando work, the configuration is very similar to Lando. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts, DevOps venting? Nick?
So, I like to automate everything I can, but one thing that I've learned is automation is it makes it easier for everyday tasks, but then the automation itself becomes more complicated. And when something breaks there, it tends, so like for example, Lando or Tugboat, like you set up that configuration file, it works great until it doesn't. And then usually there's fewer people that know how the stuff under the hood works than know how the project works. How do you test? How do you manage that process? How do you test the automated process to make sure that that's not going to break?
Yeah.
Forward, and make sure that enough people kind of know how the process works, so that if you need to get a release out and it turns out that the system isn't working, you can still get that release out in time.
Yeah, those are all
Can you
really
summarize
good
the question
questions.
for the recording?
What's that?
Can you summarize the question?
Oh,
for the
sure.
recording?
Yeah, the question is automation is good and great, but it also can make the whole process more complex, especially when it breaks down. So how do you know what to automate and what not to automate? And yeah, I mean, there's a certain payback ratio to be mindful of, right? Like I would say automate together, but not necessarily automate all the things. Like I'm sort of that old school approach where like back in my day, we didn't have SaaS and that's the way it was and we liked it. So I'm actually pretty reluctant to, use new things that make it unnecessarily complicated. I'm not saying SaaS necessarily complicates things, but I am saying like it's good to sort of be reserved about what the real needs are. Like put the tool aside and identify the real problem that's trying to be solved, and then run a test. Like run a small sort of, let's do this as a trial for a month, for 4 weeks on this project and see what the impact is. But not only that, like when you adopt a new tool, you probably need more than one person that knows how it works. And more importantly, you need to document it. And you need to document the things that you brought up. You raised some very good points. What happens if this tool goes down? How does it affect our pipeline? What happens if can we still can we roll a hot fix if we need to, if we don't have this tool in place? I think part of that, like just being a little bit more intentional, it takes time up front, but then you have a way to sort of measure the results and a way to bypass that particular thing if you need to. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out, we were talking about pull requests, like the benefits of doing PR review earlier, and it occurred to me that for a lot of the organizations that I work with, some of the benefit there does come in the form of that like blameless postmortem idea, in the sense that you're spreading the responsibility for that change out amongst people. So it can kind of help to make it so that no one person is like on the hook for a change. It's in review, it was missed in review, so
It's
less of like a finger pointing exercise.
That's interesting. So one of the things to so it was more of a comment about how the pull request workflow actually improves collaboration for a team, where if you have one person that's sort of like only sees their code and only pushes it out, then it's really easy for everybody to go, you screwed up. But if you get everybody engaged, if you have systems that create a way to have multiple eyes on the project and all the stakeholders and developers, I mean, basically what you're doing is you're talking about making the development process visual. You're making it visual for people that don't have local environments to follow along otherwise. And then it's sort of sharing the risk as a default of that, because many people have seen it along the way. Yeah, that's a very good point. Do you do that in your organization? Yeah. Cool.
So you say that DevOps is sort of the outcome of having an organization that already has safety and collaboration. Is there any sort of feedback loop? Can we say that once we implement DevOps, it's going to improve our communication and our safety?
So once we implement, can we say that once we implement DevOps, it's going to improve our communication and safety? I say perhaps once you improve your communication and safety, you're going to have DevOps. Like, in other words, like...
So you're saying it really just moves in that one direction?
Yeah, I mean, really what it is, like, at the end of the day, you have organizations that work in departments that don't really have cross-functional teams. And DevOps, at least my sort of understanding of it, is you're just trying to have cross-functional teams. You're just trying to have everybody at the table. You're trying to get people to see work sooner. You're trying to get the voices that need to be in there. You're trying to find the easiest way to distribute your work. And sometimes that's distributing your work as it's being built, and also distributing your work as creating a pipeline that everybody's invested in to get it to production sooner. In order for that to happen, in order for that level of coordination to happen, you need to have communication, you need to have safety, you need to have collaboration. Like, those are the things that you need to have in place. I hope I answered that question. I feel like I was circular in that.
How do you deal with people who have different communication styles and may be more hesitant to come forward when they're struggling with part of the project?
Yeah, the question was, how do you deal with people that have different communication styles? Some people are introvert, some people are extrovert, some people feel more comfortable asynchronously sharing the information, some people, I don't know. I'm trying to solve that problem. What do you do if you have a team? We have 3 extroverts and 1 introvert. Those extroverts got to shut up. They got to know when to listen. Likewise, the introvert needs to know when to speak and needs to speak more. That's something that I'm studying, and I don't have good answers other than education and learning. And if you're in a group, maybe one of the 101 conversations is, okay, let's talk about how we all prefer to communicate. What's the ways that we feel most comfortable? And maybe that's just a conversation that you surface. But I don't know how to do it beyond that, beyond having a conversation about how we communicate.
Well, I'm just following up because there is going to be a presentation on dealing with mental health issues. There are people who are on the autism spectrum who are in these fields because they're brilliant, but they have difficulty with that whole communication piece. So
yeah, and I will say that talk on mental illness, is it happening next hour? It's at 11:30. Erasing the Stigma, Mental Illness and Talk. JD. I've seen JD give that talk before, and it's a very good talk. I highly recommend it. But I do agree that having if you're doing DevOps, one of the things is you need to talk about how do we communicate, and is the way that we communicate make everybody comfortable, or are there things that we need to do to be more inclusive in our communication? Yeah, this gentleman here, and then you.
Can you speak to selling this? So
Which part?
Well, you make a product that makes previews, which is the end of your DevOps stack, right? Can you talk about how your approach to, I guess, this DevOps workflow that comes out of your creative cycle, how that ends up in the sales stack, how the customers receive or don't receive it?
Yeah. How to sell DevOps in an organization, for instance. I guess part of it is that it's not so part of it just seems like this is the way the world is moving. If you can't get your code out to production faster, you're going to be in trouble. And there's many examples that you can point to that of companies that are able to move faster. Part of the communication side is really for moving quickly, but it's also for innovation. Like it's fostering the innovation in your organization. If you don't have a way for people to feel safe enough to give feedback or challenge something or say this is a bad idea, then as an organization, you're just setting yourself up for unnecessary risk and even more failure. Like there's a level of trust in your team that that has a strong reward benefit, right? If you're asking these people to do the work, but you're not taking the time to do blameless postmortems, you're missing out on huge learning opportunities. Everybody knows that data is a big deal, like being able to measure the results. Why not measure the results of the failures in the way that you are success? And why not have a better process in place to capture those failures and better understand why they're happening quicker than waiting for the traditional life cycles of, all right, Bob, can you, Bob was a stakeholder. Jane, can you update the staging server? We've got 3 months of work we need to show off. No, that's a horrible idea. Does that kind of speak to that? All right. Good question.
So I guess kind of building on that, and this has mostly been about fostering a culture internally in an organization, but then you have the stakeholders on preview environments and working with a client as an agency, and I don't know, possibly doing retrospectives with the client in some cases. And so could you talk about kind of selling that or onboarding the client onto that culture, how much that impacts the internal culture as well?
Yeah, sort of onboarding a client to a DevOps culture. I'm a big fan of leading by example, which can be a little scary. So engaging with a client and just showing that openness and transparency. The way you can do it as an agency, if I'm sort of getting to your question, is, for instance, putting your development team front and center with the stakeholders, getting out of the way, bringing the people that are doing the work to the table so they can have those conversations directly. That's a good example of sort of breaking down traditional silos, right? Your developer needs to know more details about the project. Usually that goes through the project manager, but why not have your developer there too? Why not have your developer ask the questions directly? Maybe that's just one example. I'm curious if other people have examples of, ways of helping show the client to be more open and collaborative and sort of the benefits of that. For the other side, the client is like those preview environments is like, hey, how would you like to see the work at any time that we're doing for you? Would you think that would be a valuable part rather than trying to keep your own local up to date so that you can see the work? Does anybody else have any thoughts or ideas on that?
Yeah, I think just going along with sort of agile ideas, you're able to listen to the client and pivot when you need to pivot a lot easier. If you're following the DevOps workflow, you're previewing work on a tugboat environment, let's say, and you're able to show them pretty quickly how quickly you can shift.
Yeah.
They're also able to pivot, right? Like if they see it not working, like it's working exactly how they asked you to do it, and now that they see it working, they think we shouldn't put any more time into this. So
Yeah.
that can be really addictive too, to have that early awareness.
Yeah.
It's easier to get rid of those small environments than a staging environment.
Yeah.
And
And maybe just, we're at time, but maybe just a parting thought around that is there is a value shift with DevOps, right? And not every client, not every person may be on board with those value shifts. But if I had to call them out, I would say the value shifts are collaborate openly, which is new, and sort of this default to trust, this sort of you've hired these people for a reason to do their job. Let them do their job and create a continuous feedback loop with your team. And that's a big shift for when you're working with insurance companies started from, in 1939 that has seen the good, bad, and the ugly through all the years, survived depression, all of that. Recession, maybe depression too, but all of that sort of stuff is a big shift for those kinds of institutions. So thank you so much for the conversation, you guys. I really enjoyed it.